The Knife is a Wasp by Manly Knives in S90V steel. I had heard about Manly Knives quite a while back. I think Big Brown Bear was the first one to bring the brand to my attention. Manly Knives has a model called the Peak, and it's got a whole thumb opening in it that's oval shaped. Looks a lot like a Spyderco. And he reached out to me about it, and we talked about the brand, and then time went by and I forgot about it. And I've seen him pop up a few times, but recently Gary Creeley on his Preferred Blades podcast did a discussion piece on the Manly Knives Wasp. And a week or so later, a friend of mine who's a sharpener picked one up and reached out to me to tell me how much he liked it and how impressed he was with it. And he sent me a video of the knife and how it functions, and I was immediately interested, and I said, where is that? Where can I find that? So he let me know what the website was, and I went on there, and I contacted Manly Knives. I called them and left a message saying that I really liked the product and I was interested in reviewing the product. And I went ahead and ordered a Wasp because these come in fairly limited runs periodically. They periodically will pop up. So I was, that day I was afraid I was going to lose it. So I went ahead and ordered the knife. And at the end of the day, the person who runs the USA branch of Manly Knives reached out to me, and he called me and we talked, and I talked about who I am and what I do. And he said, I said, I want to review the knife. I'm very excited about it. And he said, listen, if you're going to review it, I'll refund you the money and just send you the knife. So I said, okay, that would be great. So he actually ended up sending me two models. He sent me the Wasp and he sent me a Peak. So this model, the Wasp, is a small to medium sized slip joint in S90V steel. So a modern slip joint in a super steel, G10 handles, pocket clip, deep carry, full steel liners. The action on the blade, the opening and closing, is pretty interesting. It's pretty different. It's got good feel to it in that it's a firm slip joint. It's not real loose, but the half stop is actually it's a 3-position half stop. So it's about a quarter, a half, and a 3/4, and then closed. So it moves out the whole way. That's a feature that was pretty strange at first, but I've kind of gotten used to it, and I don't mind it as much as I thought I was going to. I mean, I could do with just a half stop if it was really strong, but I don't mind the extra pieces to it. The geometry that these are made with is exceptional. Out of the box, I measured this with digital calipers at 10 thousandths behind the edge. So on the primary grind, off the edge bevel, or 0.3 millimeters, so a little less than 1/3 of a millimeter, which is outstanding for a blade in S90V. What's really significant about these, what really catches my attention, is the price. These are very well priced, given the competition in this size and comparable steel. So, I mean, it's really a nice deal, and it really, Manly offering these knives at the price that they do really opens up the opportunity for people wanting to try out steels like S90V. It really gives the availability to them. So in getting the knife, the edge on it was good, the geometry was phenomenal. I like the feel of the knife. The build quality is fine, especially given the price. I mean, I've got knives in similar steels of similar size that are nicer, but nowhere near this reasonably priced. And as far as functioning goes, build quality wise, this knife is fine. I did some cutting with it right out of the box. I cut up a pretty good amount of cardboard, filling up the better part of a trash can, just to see what I thought about the ergonomics of it and how it handled, and what would go on with the lock, well, or the lack thereof, the fact that it's a slip joint. And there really wasn't any issues with it. Ergonomically, it was very good. It slices very well. I was very pleased with it. I wanted to do a comparison with this S90V. Manly puts in a card with the knife that says that the steel's rock weld at 61, which also is really great. I mean, that's what a great point to shoot for right out of the gate. I know somebody who got one of these and Rockwell tested it, and it tested at 61, 62. So, I mean, they're up there. They're not inaccurate with that. So, I mean, I wasn't going to chew into wood or anything with this, but I wanted to do some cutting with cardboard. I wanted to do a comparison. You know, Manly's a new company, and these are made out of the country and shipped in. Manly is it's a small shop in Bulgaria that makes these, which explains the limited availability. They'll make what they can. They'll ship them over, or ship them out, and the knives sell. And after they're gone, it can take, you know, a month or 2 months for more to come in. So I really wanted to really put the knife through some paces and see how their S90V did. I mean, I don't know how they're heat treating it, or if they're, you know, what they're doing with it, other than the fact that it's rock weld at 61. So I really wanted to get, you know, dirt under my fingernails, getting a feel for how the knife performed. I needed to test it against something, and I'm not real big on testing $200+ you know, S90V knives from Spyderco. But I did have a knife in 204p, CTS 204p, that I thought would be appropriate for this test. The knife was a Southern from Spyderco. And really, I mean, what I wanted to see was not the exact performance of Manly's S90V. What I was really interested in was, did it hold up to the normal performance that S90V would hold up to? So, for the test, both knives, 30 inclusive, sharpened the same. I had initially sharpened this before the test and put a very nice edge on it, and gotten a very clean hair whittling video that I threw up on Instagram. And the edge, you know, it, as far as whittling hair, it performed very good, but it did feel a little bit choppy, a little bit fragmented. That was the edge that I decided to use for this testing. When I sharpened 204p that first time, the edge came up beautifully, absolutely hair whittling sharp. You know, 204p, M390, 20CV, that family of steels is, as much as it's popular, and sometimes it seems like we hear too much about it, they do sharpen beautifully. They are great performers. So the test was push cutting cardboard, and the stopping point was where the knife would no longer shave hair. I wasn't sure what I was feeling on the edge of the Manly. You know, I had thrown in a Ken Schwartz 3K diamond plate. The progression was DMT coarse, DMT fine, Ken Schwartz 3K, 4 micron on leather, 1 micron on leather. And like I said, the stopping point was where the knife would no longer shave hair. So going through the initial test, I was expecting for the knife from Manly to perform similar or above CTS 204p. But what I got was a strange result. The difference, it was quite a big difference in favor of CTS 204p, like a 45% difference. I really wasn't expecting to do multiple tests here. I just wanted a nice, quick comparison just to show where Manly stood as far as S90V was concerned. But with a result like that, the next move you make, you know, when you get something crazy like that that doesn't make sense, is you repeat the test. So, again, I sharpened both knives, DMT coarse, fine, Ken Schwartz 3K diamond plate, 4 micron, 1 micron on leather. The cardboard was changing each test, but other than that, everything was the same. The angles were the same, the sharpening was the same. And I noticed after the next sharpening, which on this next sharpening, I did 2 rotations on the coarse stone for the Manly. I mean, I wanted to remove some material because I thought to myself, I wasn't sure why I was getting that result in the first test. I thought maybe it was something that I did with the sharpening. Maybe the edge was overheated. Maybe Manly steel has an issue with it beyond just an overheated edge. You know, I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to make assumptions. I wanted to repeat the test and see what happened and try and get a better handle on the situation. So, going through the next test, both knives scored the same. They both stopped shaving hair at the same point. Now again, the number of inches was different, number of inches cardboard cut, but it was a different cardboard, so that's going to happen. I wanted to do a third run for several reasons. One, I hadn't checked in 80 or so inches on the second test to see if the knife was still shaving hair. So that's a pretty big window for one knife to do better than the other one. The other thing was I was 1 for 1, and I wanted to conclude, I wanted to be sure. So I did a third run, sharpened the same, all things equal, different kind of cardboard again, and again both knives scored the exact same, under 30 inches of cardboard on the check. So pretty good to conclude that Manly Knives S90V is on the level. It's performing good. I don't know if I would keep getting better performance if I kept running the test. I mean, the fact that the knife is ground at 10 thousandths behind the edge by the maker, by the manufacturer, if it was to be an overheated edge, you'd have less blade for it to distribute through down near the edge. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if the edge was overheated or if it was something I did. I'm just not sure yet. I've got another model in S90V from Manly Knives, and I'm looking forward to getting some use in with that and seeing what I find, seeing what I think. But it was a good test, good conclusion. I like the knife from Manly. I think that it's a great model. I needed to sharpen it again to get it back in my pocket. I wanted to do something a little bit different. I've got a really strong routine with diamond plates with S90V, S110V, and a few other steels that I really tend not to deviate with. But I thought, you know what? Manly sent me this knife. I'm going to mess around a little bit and try some different things. So for this last sharpening, instead of starting with DMT plates, I started with metallic bonded diamond stone, starting with the 5040. I worked with that, re-apexed the knife, and then moved on to the 1410, and I worked with that, bringing the sharpness up a little bit. You know, these metallic bonded stones, they cut different than diamond plates because the abrasive sits within the stone. With a diamond plate, it sits on the stone and kind of sticks off. So these are cutting differently. They're cutting differently than a diamond plate would. Because of that, moving from that to Ken Short's 3K diamond plate, I'm getting a much more, what I perceive to be a much more pure 3K edge. The edge that I'm getting off the metallic bonded stones is a much finer edge than you would get off the plates. The plates kind of have they cut more harshly. Now the other thing is, with something like a progression on diamond plates going coarse, fine, extra fine, or 3K, or whatever you want to call it, whatever your finishing diamond stone is, the edge that you're getting off of your final diamond stone it's affected by the ones before it, at least with the way that I sharpen. Now, I mean, maybe if you're taking each diamond plate and just going and going and going until you completely remove previous scratch pattern, then you would have just that scratch pattern. But I'm not doing that. I'm building on the whole thing as I go. So I'll work with the coarse, establish a scratch pattern, apex the knife, form a burr from one side to the next, then move on to the next stone. I'm not hanging around scratching away at the knife, worrying about the aesthetic of the edge. I'm not worried about how it looks. I move on to the fine, work with that. Again, apex the knife, form a burr on one side, flip it, form a burr on the other, and then I move on. Move on to the 3K, work with that, and do the same thing. But you've got pieces of the scratch pattern from the course that are still there when I'm done with the 3K. So the size of the teeth, the feel of the whole thing, it's based off the progression, not the final stone. If you're sitting there with a polishing stone just going nuts until a knife is completely polished, then fine, then you've got that polished edge, but I'm not doing that. So the fact that I replaced the DMT coarse and fine with a metallic bonded 5040 and 1410 means that the edge from the 3K is going to be different. It's going to be different than what I'm used to. And I thought the whole thing was interesting. After the 3K from Ken Schwartz, I moved on to Spyderco Ultrafine. Working with that, bringing the sharpness up. After the Spyderco Ultrafine, I moved on to a 4 micron strap-on leather, then a 1 micron strap-on leather. And then I moved on to a 1/4 micron strap-on leather and a 1/10 of a micron strap-on leather. After that, the edge that I was left with was extremely fine. It was hair whittling sharp. There was no argument about that, but it was a different hair whittling than I'm used to on something like S90V. I mean, I'm at a point where I'll judge the edge not on whether or not it whittles a hair, but how it whittles a hair. And this edge, with the way that it whittled, reminded me more like an edge off of something like a Suhiro than a diamond plate. That had to do with how fine the edge was. It's an extremely fine edge on S90V, very polished, and the sharpening was just about all diamond. So I mean, I had the ultrafine in there, but not too big of an impact from that. So the fact that the edge is so polished, it's an interesting aspect to it. I'm curious to see what happens through use with this knife with this kind of edge on it. I want to see what S90V is going to do with this kind of edge as compared to the normal edge I would use using DMT plates and ceramic and strops, where you've got a more aggressive scratch pattern in the steel. I mean, with that DMT edge, I can keep a knife hair whittling just stropping it for weeks. So I'm really curious how this is going to hold up. Now the other question is, I mean, if it doesn't hold up hair whittling as long, what does that mean? I mean, you got to start to ask the question, should everything be judged by how it whittles hair? Or is there more to it than that? A knife may whittle hair longer with a certain edge, but maybe once you get to some kind of a working edge or shaving edge, it's a different story. These are questions that, I mean, they've got answers, but I haven't delved into them yet. So it's all interesting. I'd like to see just how this edge does just with carrying the knife. Now, on that subject, interesting thing, with this knife, I sharpened it so much through all this testing that I've got a little bit of tip sticking out of the knife. There's a little bit sticking up there, which is unfortunate. With this kind of design, with the tip sitting close to the edge of the scales, if you're a sharpener and you're sharpening, you know, if you're testing the steel, you've really got to remove any fatigued steel. So it was necessary through all the tests. The funny thing was, I was planning on a light review of this and really testing with the peak, and this thing got the bad end of the bat on that one. I really wanted this model in my pocket, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I've considered filing down the kick on this, but I'm afraid that I'll get blade wrap inside the on the back spring. I mean, I checked the tolerances, and you know, I even talked to somebody who took one of these apart and looked at the amount of space that you've got, and there's not much there. So I don't know if filing down the kick is the best idea. What I might do is take the the spine forward on the knife, which will drop the point down some on the edge. And if I do that, it'll be nicely tucked away inside the handle. Maybe just as a design suggestion, tucking that tip into the handle is a better idea. But nonetheless, I do like the model overall, and I think that Manley did a good job with it, and I think that it's very reasonable, extremely reasonable given what you're getting. Possibly an overheated edge, or maybe a mistake that I made with the sharpening or with the test. I'm not sure. I'm going to need more exposure to products from Manley Knives, but I am looking forward to that. I was very glad that the company sent it out to me, and I think that it's a great model and a great way to go. I'm glad to see such a well-made modern slip joint in a super steel.